a castle built inside a mountain. A vast cave inhabited by dragons. This may sound like a fantasy story, but these places are real. We are Pablo and Anna from Happy Books. Today, we continue exploring Slovenia to discover why these places have inspired wonder and captured imaginations for centuries. So lace up your boots and join us as we step into Postojna and Predjama. About 50 kilometers southwest of Ljubljana lies the town of Postojna, the gateway to Slovenia's karst region. Shaped by water over millions of years, the karst is known for its limestone formations, disappearing rivers and an extraordinary world hidden beneath the surface. This morning, we caught an early train to Postojna. Less than an hour later, we were ready to discover what lies underground. Home to around 10,000 people, Postojna grew along one of the natural routes connecting Central Europe with the Adriatic. Travelers have been passing through this area for centuries. Just outside town, Postojna Cave has welcomed visitors for more than 200 years. The cave system stretches for over 24 kilometers, although the guided route covers 5. The entrance already makes it clear that this will not be an ordinary cave visit. The tour begins with a train ride. That takes us around 3.5 kilometers into the cave. As we leave the station, daylight quickly disappears behind us. The railway opened here in 1872, becoming the world's first railway inside an underground cave. We enter a strange and fascinating world, completely different from the one outside. Over millions of years, the Pivka River carved these spectacular spaces deep beneath the surface, creating a landscape that feels like an alien world. The train carries visitors through vast chambers, reaching areas that are hours away on foot. Postojna Cave is part of an underground system, with more than 24 kilometers of explored passages. Much of this underground world was formed in limestone. Over millions of years, rainwater seeped slowly through its cracks, dissolving the rock drop by drop and opening up a vast labyrinth of caves, rivers and passages beneath the surface. These caves are part of a karst landscape, shaped by water both above and below ground. The word karst comes from Kras, the name traditionally used for this region. The term was later adopted by geologists around the world to describe similar limestone landscapes. So, whenever you hear about karst landscapes, remember, the word itself comes from this region. But this underground world is not empty. Postojna Cave is home to more than 150 animal species adapted to life underground, an extraordinary level of diversity on a global scale. And none is more surprising than the Om. For centuries, people in this region believed that dragons lived in the depths. The reason was simple. After heavy rain, a strange pink animal would be washed out by the water flowing from the caves. They thought they were the offspring of those dragons. Today we know it is Proteus sanguinus, an amphibian remarkably adapted to life in complete darkness. It has almost no pigmentation, its eyes are not functional, and its skin is extremely sensitive to light. It can survive for up to a decade without food and live for nearly 100 years. Even Charles Darwin mentioned it in On the Origin of Species as an example of animals adapted to life underground. When we step off the train, the experience changes completely. The noise disappears, and suddenly, time seems to stand still. The temperature remains constant throughout the year, at around 10 degrees Celsius. The tour continues on foot, among impossible shapes that seem carved by hand, yet shaped naturally by water over millions of years. From the ceiling hang formations known as stalactites, created by drops of water that leave minerals behind as they filter through the rock. On the ground, stalagmites grow as those same drops continue depositing minerals when they fall. When a stalactite and a stalagmite meet, they form stone columns that connect the ceiling to the floor. The walls display ochre, reddish and yellowish tones, created mainly by iron oxides and clays in the limestone. In some sections, water has sculpted smooth surfaces that look almost like marble. In others, dissolution has left sharp, chaotic textures, as if the rock were melting. Yet it is the time these formations take to grow that is hardest to grasp. Water does not flow in the same way throughout the cave. Its amount, composition, and the continuity of its flow vary from place to place. As a result, a stalactite can take anywhere from a few years to thousands of years to grow just a few millimeters. The oldest dated stalagmite visible along the tour route is known as the skyscraper. It stands 16 meters tall and is estimated to have begun forming around 150,000 years ago. And yet, compared with a cave that began to form around 3 million years ago, it is still relatively young. Although the skyscraper is the oldest dated formation visible along the tour route, even older ones lie elsewhere in the cave, beyond the visitor route. Some are more than 500,000 years old. Against that scale, human history feels like little more than an instant. We leave the caves with an overwhelming sense of wonder and the impression that we have explored only a small part of this immense world, which water has been shaping in the darkness for millions of years. From here, we head to our next destination, just 10 kilometers away. The first time you see Predjama Castle, it is hard to believe it is real. It looks like something from a fantasy film. But it has stood here for more than 800 years. It was not built on the mountain, but inside it, occupying the entrance to an enormous cave, set into a 123-meter high cliff. Shortly after we arrived, it started to rain, so we made our way inside the castle. When the first medieval castle was built, its architecture took advantage of a landscape that had been forming for millions of years. The cave became an integral part of the fortress. Perhaps that is why it fits so naturally into a fantasy world. Fans of The Witcher might recognize it as Vulpan Castle, featured in the second episode of Season 3. Much of the castle's protection came from the rock itself. Many of its rooms are directly integrated with the natural cave. While the differences in level shape the way visitors move through the castle. In some areas, the rock itself serves as both wall and ceiling. Here, nature and architecture form a single structure. As you can imagine, life here could not have been particularly comfortable. Predjama was a residence, but above all, it was a fortress where security took priority over comfort. The castle had a small chapel. This allowed the lord of the castle to attend religious services without having to leave the fortress. In fact, through these small openings, he could listen to them from his own room, located just on the other side of the wall. The castle also houses a collection of medieval weapons and armor. Plate armor was among the most sophisticated military technologies of its time, making it required highly specialized craftsmanship. The tour also passes through a dungeon set within the rock. On the upper floor, a gallery decorated with hunting trophies leads to a courtyard built directly against the rock. Displayed there are enormous stone cannonballs, of the type fired by bombards, the earliest heavy siege cannons. And this is where the legend of Predjama's most famous inhabitant begins. In the late 15th century, the lord of the castle was Erazem of Predjama. The exact reasons for his break with Emperor Frederick III are unknown, but he eventually allied himself with the Hungarian king Matthias Corvinus and began attacking imperial territories. In 1483, imperial troops surrounded Predjama. The castle's location made a direct assault almost impossible, though they tried to starve its occupants into surrender. But a secret passage through the caves allowed supplies to continue reaching the castle. Months later, one of his servants is said to have betrayed Erazem and revealed when he used the latrine, a small toilet built into the wall, from which waste fell through an opening to the outside. This part of the structure was one of the castle's few vulnerable points. A cannon shot struck the spot and killed him. The most popular version of the legend claims that Erazem was sitting on the latrine at the time. But whether that part is true, we'll probably never know. From the upper part of the castle, we enter a large natural cave. During the second half of the 15th century, this space was adapted as a defensive refuge. A high masonry wall sealed off the cave, and a small drawbridge crossed the gap separating it from the rest of the castle. When raised, the refuge could be isolated and serve as a final defensive position. From there, we climb narrow steps carved directly into the rock. The railings and lighting belong to the modern visitor route, but the steps formed part of the historic access, although no one knows exactly when they were carved. They lead to several platforms and observation posts from which the castle and its surroundings could be watched. But holding out also required water. A well several meters deep still survives on one of the platforms, a crucial resource during a siege. At the highest point begins the so-called Erazem's passage, a narrow passage that rises through the rock and eventually emerges on the plateau above the cliff. And as we saw earlier, tradition says Erazem used it to bring supplies into the castle during the siege. The cave therefore served as a refuge, an observation post, a source of water, and a route to the outside world. The rock did more than protect the castle, it became part of it. And so, on this rainy day, surrounded by this beautiful landscape, we say goodbye to Predjama Castle. Over the next few episodes, our journey through Slovenia continues. We'll visit Lake Bled, one of the country's most spectacular places, and explore several small medieval towns, each with its own distinct charm. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating new content. See you in the next video. Bye bye.